The rain had just begun to fall when the quiet maid, Alina, stepped out of the old staff in trance, her worn shoes soaking instantly on the marble steps of the estate. She didn't mind the rain. In fact, she always said it helped her hide the emotion she was too shy to show. And today, like every day, those emotions were tied to one person, Adrian Hale, the wealthy man who owned the mansion she worked in. What he didn't know was that Alina had carried a soft, unspoken love for him for years. Not because of his money, not because of his status, but because of the kindness she had seen in him when he thought no one was watching. People often said a maid and a millionaire lived in two different worlds, separated by nothing less than a lifetime of differences. Yet Alina's heart refused to accept that. Every morning, she watched him walk through the hallways with calm confidence, answering calls, giving instructions, making decisions that shaped entire companies. To everyone else, he was a powerful businessman. To Alina, he was the man who once stopped a meeting to help a lost child outside the gate. He was the man who picked up a fallen cup and apologized to her even though she insisted it was her fault. He was a man who never knew she existed beyond her uniform and silent presence, but she saw him in every small act that revealed the real human behind the wealth. But Adrian Hale had no idea. He lived in a world where people approached him for deals, opportunities, or favors, not genuine affection. A world where sincerity was rare and trust even rarer. So when he glanced at Alina, it was always with polite distance, the way someone looked at a passing shadow, acknowledging it, but never realizing its warmth. That evening, something changed. Alina noticed him standing alone near the large window of the library, the usually composed man looking strangely lost. His phone lay untouched on the table, and the tension in his shoulders showed a weight he wasn't sharing with anyone. She hesitated, unsure if it was her place to ask if he was all right, but something in his expression made her step forward, quietly, carefully. Just as she opened her mouth, the power suddenly went out. The mansion fell into darkness. Alina gasped softly, and Adrian turned sharply toward the sound of her voice. Their eyes met, really met, for the first time. In the dim emergency light that flickered on seconds later, Adrian's expression shifted, as if he was seeing her not as a maid, but as a person standing inches away, with fear in her eyes and concern in her voice. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, surprising her. Alina nodded, though her heart raced so fast she could barely think. She didn't know that this single moment would become the beginning of something no one expected. Not the staff, not the city, not even Adrian himself. Because what happened next would challenge what people believed about class, love, loyalty, and fate, and leave everyone stunned when the truth finally came out. For a moment, neither of them moved. The soft glow from the emergency lights cast long shadows across the library, giving the room an almost unreal stillness. Alina could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears, and she wondered if Adrian could hear it too. She had never been this close to him before, close enough to see the faint tiredness beneath his calm expression, close enough to realize that even a rich man could look fragile in the right moment. He slowly turned back to the window, but something in his silence hinted that he wasn't simply admiring the rain. Something was troubling him, something deep enough to make a man like him forget his usual composure. Alina stood quietly, not wanting to intrude, yet unable to walk away. She knew her place in the mansion. She knew what lines shouldn't be crossed. But she also knew what it felt like to carry worries alone. She had lived her entire life that way, moving from house to house, doing chores nobody noticed, holding feelings nobody asked about. That was the life of a poor maid. People relied on her hands, but never asked about her heart. She took a small step back, thinking she should leave before he realized how long she had been standing there. But just as she turned, Adrian spoke. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Did the lights go out in the whole house?" he asked, almost as if he needed a distraction. Alina managed a steady breath. "Yes, sir. I think so." He nodded, though his eyes remained distant. Strange. The backup system never fails. His tone hinted that the electricity wasn't the only thing weighing on his mind. Alina sensed it instinctively, the way someone senses a crack in a wall before it becomes visible. Something was wrong, something far bigger than a simple power outage. She gathered her courage and spoke again, her voice low and respectful. Should I check with the staff or call maintenance? Adrian hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. It wasn't about the lights. He was thinking about something else entirely. Something he wasn't ready to share. No, he said finally. It's fine. They'll handle it. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of worry, the kind that didn't come from a technical problem. It came from a secret. Alina didn't press him. She simply stood there, her presence quiet, steady, something he didn't know he needed. From the hallway, a distant sound echoed. A heavy thud followed by quick footsteps. Adrian straightened, alert. Alina felt her breath catch. It wasn't unusual for staff to move around during emergencies, but this sound felt different, hurried, urgent. Adrian glanced toward the door, and for the first time, his confident posture faltered. Stay here, he said, his voice tense now. Before she could respond, he stepped out into the dim corridor, leaving Alina alone in the shadowed library. She watched him disappear down the hallway, her chest tightening with feelings she couldn't fully explain. Fear? Concern? Or something deeper? She wanted to follow, but she knew she shouldn't. She stood at the doorway, gripping the edge of the frame as another strange sound echoed to the mansion, something like a door slamming shut, followed by muffled voices. It was in that moment Alina realized this night was far from ordinary. Something was happening inside the Hale mansion, something that the rich man had been hiding behind his calm smile, something that could change everything for both of them, and she had no idea that before the night ended, she would be pulled right into the center of it. Alina waited in the library, every second stretching longer than the last. The dim emergency light flickered again, casting shadows on the walls like moving figures. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to silence the uneasy feeling growing inside her. It wasn't just the darkness or the strange noises. It was Adrian's expression before he left, like he was walking towards something he had tried to avoid for a long time. She listened carefully, hoping to catch some clue about what was happening. But the mansion had grown quiet again, unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that made the air feel heavy. She took one step into the hallway, then another, unable to stand still any longer. The mansion was her workplace, her shelter, her second home. If something was wrong, she couldn't pretend not to notice. As she walked down the corridor, her mind kept replaying the last few months. The mansion had changed lately. More security guards, more locked rooms, more hushed conversations she wasn't meant to hear. Alina always tried to stay respectful and silent, but it was impossible not to feel the shift. The rich man she admired had been carrying a secret burden long before tonight, a burden heavy enough to dim the brightness in his eyes. She passed the dining room and paused when she noticed a thin line of light coming from under the basement door. The basement was usually locked. Staff weren't allowed there unless Adrian gave permission. Alina's heart picked up. Something about that faint glow felt important. She reached for the knob, but it didn't budge. Still locked. Suddenly, footsteps approached. She jumped back, pressing herself against the wall as someone hurried up the basement stairs. The door opened just a crack, enough for Alina to see a man in a dark suit, one she didn't recognize. He wasn't a staff member. He wasn't a guest. He moved with urgency, slipping out with a folder in his hand before walking deeper into the mansion with quick, calculated steps. Alina's breath caught. Who was he? And why was he coming from the locked basement? Behind her, another voice echoed from a nearby hall. Two staff members whispered nervously to each other. "I told you something's not right," one whispered. "He's been getting those private deliveries at night. No labels, no names." "And the extra guards, what are they even watching for?" the other replied. Alina listened, her pulse racing. She had suspected something was going on, but hearing others whisper about it made the uncertainty feel even bigger. She thought of Adrian, how tired he looked, how distant he had become. The power outage clearly wasn't an accident. Something was happening that he didn't want anyone to know, something connected to the mysterious man from the basement. As she turned a corner, she nearly collided with Adrian himself. His expression was tense, but when he saw her, the tension softened just a little. "I thought I told you to stay in the library," he said quietly, not angry, just worried. She opened her mouth to explain, but he gently placed a hand on her arm. "It's not safe right now," he whispered. Those words sent a chill through her entire body. Not safe? In the mansion that had always felt secure? Alina looked into his eyes, searching for answers he wasn't ready to give. And in that moment, she realized something life-changing. Whatever secret Adrian was hiding, she was already part of it, whether he wanted her to be or not. And the night was far from over. Adrian's hand lingered on her arm for a moment longer than he intended, and Alina felt his unease travel straight through his touch. He glanced down the hallway, making sure no one else was listening. The faint emergency light made the shadows stretch across his face, highlighting the worry line she had never noticed before. He wasn't just stressed, he was afraid. And if a man like Adrian Hale was afraid, then something far more serious was happening than a simple power failure or an unexpected visitor. "We need to move," he whispered, his voice low. "But you have to trust me." Alina nodded slowly, though confusion swirled inside her. She followed him down the corridor, her steps quick to match his. The mansion suddenly felt larger, colder, as if every corner held a secret watching them. Adrian paused near the staircase, listening, really listening, to the faint sounds coming from different parts of the house. Alina heard whispers, hurried footsteps, and something that sounded like the rustling of papers. The air felt tense, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. They turned toward the west wing, a part of the mansion Alina rarely entered. Adrian unlocked a small side door and motioned for her to go inside. The room was dimly lit by a single emergency light, and in the center stood a large wooden chest, heavy, locked, and clearly important. Alina had cleaned around it before, but she was never allowed to touch it. Adrian knelt beside it and pressed his hand flat against the lid, almost as if gathering courage. Alina watched him silently, sensing this chest held the reason behind the strange deliveries, extra guards, and the secretive atmosphere that had taken over the mansion. Before he could speak, another noise echoed through the hallway, a loud bang followed by hurried footsteps. Adrian immediately stood up, his expression changing from anxiety to determination. "They're here already," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than to her. Alina's heart thumped violently. "Who?" she whispered. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw a conflict in his eyes. Not the cold business-like distance he usually showed, but a real human struggle. He wanted to protect her, but he also needed to tell her something important, something he had kept hidden for too long. "Alina, there are things happening that you don't know. Things I never wanted you, any of the staff, to be involved in." His voice was heavy, almost breaking. Before she could ask anything, the doorknob behind them twisted sharply. Someone was trying to get in. Adrian reacted immediately, pulling Alina closer to the wooden chest as the door shook violently under the force of whoever was outside. "Stay behind me," he whispered, placing himself between her and the door. The knocks grew louder, desperate, impatient. Alina felt her breath catch in her throat as shadows moved under the gap at the bottom of the door. The mysterious man she had seen earlier murmured something on the other side. Then the sound of metal scraping against metal filled the room. They were trying to pick the lock. Adrian exhaled deeply. "They can't get what's inside this chest," he said urgently. "If they do, everything changes. For me and for you." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know what everything meant, but the fear in his voice told her it was serious. Dangerous even. The lock clicked halfway open. Adrian braced himself. Alina clutched the edge of the wooden chest, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The door gave another violent shake, then began to open, and in that split second before the gap widened, Alina understood one thing clearly. Whatever secret Adrian was hiding, whatever danger was now staring them in the face, they were standing right at the edge of the storm, and the real truth was about to break open. The door opened only an inch before a firm hand shoved it wider, and a tall figure stepped into the dim room. Alina froze, certain it was a mysterious man from the basement. But as the emergency light caught his face, she gasped softly. It wasn't him. It was someone she recognized, Samuel, Adrian's longtime personal assistant. The same man who always appeared calm, organized, and loyal. But tonight something was different. His face was pale, tense, his breath sharp and uneven. He looked like someone who had been running from something, or toward something. Adrian, Samuel whispered urgently, glancing behind him before shutting the door again. You need to hide it. They're almost here. Adrian stiffened. Samuel, you shouldn't be involved. Samuel shook his head, stepping closer. I already am, whether you like it or not. Alina's pulse quickened. She had never heard Samuel speak to Adrian like that. Direct, emotional, almost desperate. It made her realize that whatever was happening tonight wasn't new. It had been building for a long time, and Samuel had been part of it from the beginning. What's going on? Alina finally whispered, unable to stay silent any longer. Both men looked at her. Adrian with worry, Samuel with a hint of surprise that she was even there. Adrian opened his mouth to answer, but Samuel cut him off. She deserves to know, Samuel said firmly. If they get in here, she's at just as much risk as we are. Risk? The word hit Alina hard. She took a small step back, her fingers tightening around the edge of the chest. Adrian's eyes softened with guilt. I never wanted you to get dragged into this, he said quietly. You were supposed to be protected from all of it. His voice trembled just enough for her to hear the truth in it. This wasn't just business or money. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was something deeper, something dangerous. Samuel moved toward the wooden chest and placed his hand on it. They know you didn't destroy it, he whispered. That's why the power went out. They're searching every room. Alina felt the air in her lungs turn heavy. Destroy what? What could be inside the chest that strangers, and even Samuel, were so desperate to protect or hide? Adrian pressed his lips together. We don't have time, he said. We need to move the chest before they break in again. He bent down to unlock it, but before he could lift the lid, another voice echoed from the hallway, cold, unfamiliar, and far too close. Open the door, the voice commanded. We know what you're hiding. Alina felt the blood drain from her face. The doorknob began to twist again, but this time the force behind it was different. Stronger, sharper, as though someone was ready to break it down. Samuel grabbed Adrian's arm. They brought backup, he whispered. We have to go now. Adrian turned to Alina, and she saw something in his eyes she had never expected. Fear mixed with responsibility. He reached for her hand, pulling her closer to the chest. Alina, he whispered, whatever happens next, stay by me. Don't leave my side. The door shook violently. The lights flickered again. And just as the wood began to crack under the force from the outside, Adrian lifted the lid of the chest, revealing something inside that made Alina's breath stop completely. But before she could understand what she was seeing, the door burst open and everything spiraled into chaos. The moment the door burst open, everything seemed to happen at once. Men in dark jackets rushed in, but they didn't look like criminals. They moved like people with authority, serious, disciplined, and focused. Alina stumbled back as Adrian quickly shut the chest, blocking their view. Samuel stepped forward, raising his hand slightly as if to calm the situation. Wait, Samuel said firmly. He's willing to cooperate. One of the men stepped closer. His tone was cold but controlled. We warned you, Mr. Hale. Keeping classified documents puts you and everyone around you at risk. Classified documents? Alina's mind spun. The chest wasn't holding money or jewels. It held something far more dangerous. She looked at Adrian with disbelief, and he met her gaze with genuine regret. I didn't steal anything, Adrian said steadily. I kept them safe because someone inside your own department was selling information to outsiders. The room went silent for a moment. Even the men who entered seemed momentarily thrown off. Adrian continued, his voice low but calm. I didn't know who to trust, so I kept everything locked until I had proof. The leader of the group exchanged a tense glance with the others. Where's the proof? Adrian slowly pointed to the chest. Inside. But you need to understand, I didn't want to involve anyone here, especially her. Alina's heart softened for a moment. Despite everything, his main concern had been protecting her. The men stepped forward cautiously, and Adrian opened the chest. This time, Alina could see clearly what was inside. Files, documents, drives, but also a small black notebook with a symbol she didn't recognize. As soon as the men saw it, their entire posture shifted. "That's it," the leader said quietly. "The evidence we've been searching for." Samuel exhaled in relief. "So now you can stop investigating Adrian and start looking at the real traitor." The tension in the room finally began to ease. The men carefully removed the documents, sealing them in protective bags. For the first time since the power outage, Alina felt like the danger was fading. Adrian turned toward her, his shoulders finally relaxing. "It's over," he whispered. "They'll handle the rest." But Alina wasn't ready to let the moment pass quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked softly. "Why hide everything alone?" Adrian looked at her with the kind of honesty that left no room for doubt. "Because I didn't want to pull you into my world. You're important to me, Alina, more than I ever realized until tonight." Her breath caught. She had waited years for any sign that he saw her as more than a maid. And now, in the most unexpected moment, he finally did. But before she could respond, Samuel cleared his throat awkwardly. "There's something else," he said, glancing between them. "You both need to know. The leak didn't come from outside." Adrian frowned. "What do you mean?" Samuel hesitated, then said quietly, "It came from someone inside this house." The men froze. Adrian's expression darkened with confusion. Alina felt a shiver run through her body. "Inside the house?" Adrian repeated. Samuel nodded, lowering his voice. "Someone you trust. Someone close." For a moment, the room felt colder than before. The main conflict was resolved. The classified documents were safe. But a new shadow had been cast. If the traitor was still inside the Hale mansion, then this night wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of another mystery, waiting to unfold. The room fell quiet after Samuel's final words, and for a moment it felt like the walls were listening. Adrian stared at him, processing the possibility that someone inside his own home, someone he saw every day, had betrayed him. Alina stood close, her fingers lightly touching the wooden chest, as if it might steady her. The agents exchanged glances, and their leader stepped forward with a calmer tone. "We'll investigate everyone who had access to this wing of the house," he said. "For now, you're safe. The documents are secure, and the danger is past." Adrian nodded slowly, though a shadow of hurt remained in his eyes. The men gathered the sealed files and left quietly, their footsteps fading down the long hallway. When the door finally closed behind them, the mansion slipped into a stillness that felt almost unreal after everything that had happened. Alina exhaled shakily. "I never imagined something like this could happen here," she whispered. Adrian turned toward her, his expression softening. "I never imagined you would be dragged into it," he said gently. "But I'm grateful you were near me tonight. I don't think I could have handled it alone." She looked up, surprised by the honesty in his words. For so long she had admired him from a distance, watching him carry responsibilities she never fully understood. Now, after seeing the weight he dealt with, her feelings seemed deeper and more real. Not a fantasy, not admiration, but empathy and understanding. Samuel walked over, placing a steady hand on Adrian's shoulder. "I'll check with security and make sure the rest of the house is clear," he said. "But you should rest, both of you." Adrian thanked him quietly, and Samuel slipped out of the room, leaving them alone. The emergency lights flickered back to normal as power restored, washing the mansion in a warm glow again. The danger felt like it had faded with the shadows, leaving space for something gentler. Adrian looked at Alina, his expression softer than she had ever seen. "You must think I'm a fool for keeping so much from everyone." She shook her head. "No, I think you were trying to protect the people you care about, even if it meant carrying everything on your own." He took a slow breath, as if her words reached somewhere deep inside him. "There's something else I need to say," he murmured. Alina's heart thudded. She didn't move. She barely breathed. "For a long time," he said carefully, "I thought keeping distance was safer. I thought that caring about someone would make them a target. But after tonight, I can't pretend anymore." Her chest tightened with anticipation, but he didn't rush. He stepped closer, his voice quiet and sincere. "You've been by my side for years. Kind, patient, and stronger than you realize. And somewhere along the way, I started caring for you more than I should have. Alina's eyes glistened. She had waited so long to hear something like that, but she still couldn't speak. She didn't want to break the fragile honesty between them. You don't have to say anything now, he added softly. Just know that whatever you feel, it matters to me. She finally found her voice. I care about you too, she whispered, her words trembling but true. I always have. Adrian smiled, a real, human smile that reaches eyes. It was the first smile she had seen from him all night. The tension melted from the room, replaced by quiet hope. Still, Alina couldn't help asking the question lingering in her heart. What about the person inside the house? The one who betrayed you? Adrian sighed, but this time without fear. The agents will handle it. And now that the evidence is out of the mansion, there's nothing left for anyone to steal. The danger is gone. Alina nodded slowly, letting the relief sink in. The mansion no longer felt haunted by secrets. The storm had passed, and the air felt clear again. Adrian held her gaze a moment longer before gently taking her hand. Let's leave this room, he said quietly. We've had enough shadows for one night. She followed him out, stepping into the warm hallway light, feeling the shift inside herself. Everything had changed, his world, her world, and the space between them. The poor maid who once kept her feelings hidden was no longer invisible, and the rich man who once carried everything alone finally let someone in. As they walked side by side, Alina realized the biggest twist of all wasn't the secrets, the documents, or the danger. It was that love had quietly grown in the middle of chaos. Unexpected, fragile, but undeniably real. And that was the beginning of everything that mattered next.